Before I let you go tonight, I want to point out that all of us listening tonight kind of benefit from the fact that we live in a society of specialists, because not all of us are going to pursue all of these degrees in biology or have the opportunity to study sexuality or these different things. That said, what do you think that the average person should better understand about evolution, about biology, and how it impacts culture, and some of these things that we've been talking about tonight? I- I'll say I grew up in a conservative Christian environment. I did not learn any evolution theory basically
Yeah.
at all until I was like midway through college. But what would you suggest is the place that people should maybe be putting a little bit more time and attention?
I would, if you want to know more about evolution, I think the biggest thing that people need to remember is that it's about reproduction and that it acts on phenotype. So a
Mm,
lot of times we talk about evolution, we talk about your genes and we talk about survival, and those are important concepts. Can't understate how important they are, but it's more about reproduction. It doesn't matter if you live for 1,000 years and never have a baby. That doesn't affect evolution. Then it's not. It's all about reproduction, and also it acts on phenotype, not genotype. Your genotype makes your phenotype, but not every part of your genotype is necessarily expressed, and so you still have high heterozygous advantages and blah 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 blah. And so like that's the biggest. If people want to learn about evolution, those are the things that they need to know. But as far as like how it applies to culture or things like that, I would say the best thing that people can do is try to get away, at least challenge dualisms in their life,
mm,
in their thinking. And what a dualism is the way that we draw hard lines between different components of biological reality. So for example, the difference between culture and nature. I live in this house, I have this computer and I have my phone, and the way that I cook and all these are very different than living out in the wild, but they're not really. They're actually deeply connected. And you look at other cultures across the world where people are still living in these different kinds of ways, or people who are living even farther away from the wilderness, so to speak, than I would, and yet there's still this line you can draw. Uh, draw find your dualism between sex and gender, and try to find a blur there where they are definitely different things, but the fact that we can't boil down gender or predict gender from sex says something. The fact that we still have performances based on sexual phenotypes is also a thing. Ask about it, figure things out. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. Differences between men and women. Is there a difference that's notable? Is it the only difference?
mm.
Differences between living and dead. That's a huge one in biology. Ask why viruses aren't considered to be alive. Like just play with these dualisms, and just kind of see if you can actually justify them, and if you can actually draw the lines that you think you can draw. Because a lot of times it really benefits people to realize that yes, there are boxes that we put things into, but that doesn't mean that the boxes are real.
Yeah, so the difference between mostly dead and all the way dead might be thinner than we think.
It's well, like, dude, like freaking think about it. We do cancer research on people's tumor cells. People have been dead for decades, and we still have 1 million of their cells with their DNA growing in labs all over the world. If we're gonna say that cellular life is human life, and that you make it real fucking political and be like, we're gonna say that a fetus, this little clump is so
Right.
does that mean that this person is still alive and weighs hundreds of pounds and lives in several different countries? Or is this a totally different thing that doesn't have a personality and an identity because it has human DNA? So like there's a million things to play with there. And you realize that you already live in a world of blurry lines, even if you don't admit it. You use
Mm,
blurry lines all the time. You never have anything that's cut and dry. You always have exceptions. That's the coolest thing about biology, is that there's an exception to every single rule. There's not a single definition in biology that doesn't come with unless and until and except and was so long as, and like it's just how it is. So I think if people played with that and like really kind of challenged themselves and sat down with even their most deeply held important beliefs and really questioned them and just asked, like allow themselves to feel that fuzziness and not be afraid of it, I think people would be better off.
well said. Honestly, I'm just gonna leave it there and start to take us out for the night, because pushing back on any sort of black and white thinking is just bread and butter for any good therapist. So I
Yes.
think you've definitely got the right of it. Look for those moments in your life where you feel like you have the answer, because that answer is squishy and should be full of caveats and exceptions and everything else.
Yep, absolutely. Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Hey, there it is.